One of the main things I was scared about when starting university was writing an essay. So when I heard that was one of the first things we were going to be assessed using in one of the first modules of university, I was absolutely terrified. But to be honest, once everything was said and done, I can now proudly say it's one of the things I am most proud of actually making in my first year of university. Just on a side note, before we actually start doing anything, I only got about halfway through writing the script because it took me almost over a month to write this. So about halfway through this, you might find a point where I am just completely just speaking with no plan of where I am going to be heading in the end of the conversation. And if you find that point during the script, congrats, you get a cookie. Alright, picture the scene. It's your first ever lecture of university, and you go into the lecture hall and you sit next to a few friends that you made during freshers, because that is the only way you know to calm your nerves. The lecturer walks in and starts his lecture by saying our in-course assessment, which is a 3,000-word essay analysing a relevant example of a moving image text within the context of media theory. Now, when I heard this, I thought, oh my god, this module's going to be an absolute nightmare. And that was really because of two main reasons. One, I've never been good at writing essays. I didn't do well on my English when it came down to GCSEs, and the closest I've ever got to writing an essay in general was my psychology A-levels, and even that was a tad bit iffy. And the second point is I had no clue what a word he had just said. So let's go down this together. We're going to break it down and we're going to make it make a bit more sense. The task can be broken down into three sections. A 3,000-word essay analysing. Now this part's a bit quite straight off. I need to write an analytic piece within 3,300 words. I say 3,300 because when it comes to like word counts, you get like it's like a kind of like a 10% rule where you can go 10% over and 10% under. So for this one, the minimum is 2,700 and the maximum is 3,300. The second part is a relevant example of moving image text. This is basically what I have to write about. In simpler terms, it's basically saying, choose a music video, TV show, movie, or to be honest, any video in general that you can write a good bit about. And the last bit is within the context of media theory. This is where we're mainly focusing our analysis and what the main focus of the essay is. With there being so many theoretical frameworks in just media theory in general, you can go through so many different branches, and there are so many different little corners you can turn into. So choosing the right movie to go with the right theoretical framework is really important. Right, so now we've picked apart the assignment, and now that we've done that, we can actually start to break down what our next steps are, which is basically choose our framework and choose our movie. I'm going to start with talking about the movie first because that's really what I chose first. And to be honest, when it came down to actually writing it, the reason why I chose the movie to begin with, that framework didn't even last till the end. When choosing a movie, I knew that if I wanted to make something of good quality, I needed to use a movie that I actually understood and knew a good bit about. So, when I've grown up in a musical and Disney family household my whole life, it was kind of stupid for me to not go for a Disney movie. And with the new Little Mermaid rumoured to come out at the time, this was kind of like the perfect opportunity to talk about it. So now I've chosen my movie, and now I can move on to my framework. I was initially very confident on what framework I was going to do with this movie. And this framework is postmodernism. Now, this is a very fancy word, but basically what postmodernism is basically the idea that all original ideas have been used up ages ago. So now every idea that we're making now is just a reiteration of someone else's idea, so we're just putting our own spin on stuff now. So my idea was to mention how the original story of The Little Mermaid from Hans Christian Andersen has kind of been picked up by Disney twice. So it was first picked up with the animated movie, and then it got picked up again when it found its success again to do the live action remake. But when I started thinking it through, and I started like picking out a few things that really took me off the course of actually doing this. One of the big ones was that the movie wouldn't come out until way after my due date. So that kind of split everything I wanted to talk about in half. But one really important thing for me was that even though Disney is a really good example of post-modernism with their trend at the moment of remaking their older movies, that is kind of like only one point for me in my eyes, and I found it really hard to make like extra points to branch off of that main idea. So I had to start rethinking my idea completely, really quickly. During my time thinking of what framework I was going to do, there was always one character in my mind that I always was thinking about, and that was Ursula. And to be honest, it was mainly Ursula's villain song, Poor Unfortunate Souls. In the song, she would describe her usual customers and how they were socially unattractive, and she made them attractive so people would like them more and they would be more socially acceptable. I really had trouble putting into words what I actually wanted to talk about though. So I went to my professor and basically said exactly what I've just said here, saying, I want to talk a bit about this, but I have no clue what the theory is. And he came back to me with, this sounds a lot like feminism, and in general, a woman called Judith Butler. And we'll talk about her, but it'll be further on in the lectures. Problem was that feminism wasn't going to come on until one of the last frameworks we were actually talking about. So I had to make sure I started my research early in finding a book. So I went onto the website that we look for our resources on Teesside Uni, and I basically picked that up, searched Judith Butler and saw what would come out. And what came out was the bane of my existence for the next couple months. And by that I mean this here book. Now when it was beginning, this book didn't look like this with all of these tabs, but it did in the end. This book is Gender Trouble by Judith Butler, and this is basically a one-stop shop for everything about gender identification and gender performance. So it was kind of the best way to look at The Little Mermaid, if you catch my drift. So it was basically saying what is a boy and what is a girl. I'm not going to get too far into it because I am planning on making a video that is all around the essay itself and kind of turning my essay into a video like this. And these ideas of gender performance and gender identification would be in different lights. So these are from historical to psychological. I am a terrible reader. And that is the easiest way to say it. I have so many books on my bookshelf right here that I get halfway through and go, nah, I can't read them. I get halfway through and just drop off and never pick up the book again. So when it turns out that I have to read this, I was struggling a lot. So I kind of made a way around that. I kind of had a plan to like cheat the system kind of. And that was to go to the contents, find the sections and chapters that I thought fit with what I wanted to talk about and just cherry pick quotes from it. But the lecturer didn't like that, and he instantly noticed. You see, we had a mini deadline, and in this mini deadline we had to just kind of start off our essay, and that would be like with the certain sections, and he would basically read it through and give us pointers. and the first pointer he said to me was, "Jenna, I can see you're cherry picking quotes." And he basically told me that if I wanted to have a good score with my essay and get a good grade, I needed to read the entire book and make a kind of analytic synopsis, if that's a kind of way to describe it. Basically describing everything in detail. He also gave me a really good structure on how I should like structure out my essay, like the paragraphs, the order of the paragraphs I needed. And this was the introduction, introducing the theorist and the framework, an in-depth explanation of any works used, this is like articles, books, an intro to the movie analysis, and the conclusion. And one good point that he gave to me was, even though you're talking about the movie analysis should only be a few paragraphs. It really shouldn't be that big, because the main talking point is your theoretical framework. This was very helpful to me, but with us breaking up for Christmas soon, I lost all motivation to carry on writing, which meant when I came back from holiday, I only had a week to write everything and get my head down and get it done. So, step 1, read everything. Right, when it comes to the post-its, they can be broken up into like 3 separate categories. The long post-its on the side are each chapter of the book, which are three chapters, and the post-its on the top are the sections within a chapter. And this colourful mess in the middle is basically the start and end of each quote and talking point that I wanted to include, which I felt were important in the book. These reference points are parts that I thought were the most important. So what I would do is I would basically say the start and the end of the reference point, put it in my own words, and once I had got all of them reference points, I would make a summary of all of them reference points, and that would be like a full description of the section, and that gave me enough words to be an in-depth analysis of the book. I also did this for another article that I used in my essay, and this article was called "The Disney Princess Bubble as a Cultural Influence" by Amanda Rutherford and Sarah Baker, which basically zeroed in on Disney's influence on gender stereotyping. So, before I could start actually watching the movie, there was one small step that was in the way, and that was the paragraph just underneath the in-depth explanation, and that was the movie introduction. Now, this movie introduction is basically what the movie is, a quick roundup of what the story is, the background behind it, so what I talked about before about Hans Christian Andersen's version and how Disney made a remake of it. And now finally, I can watch the movie. So when I started actually watching the movie, I kept a book with me at all times. If I saw something that I thought, right, I can actually make a point in my essay on this, I did. Now, when I say that there isn't much to talk about when it comes to the movie analysis, I only had 4 paragraphs, which compared to the rest of the essay and compared to the in-depth analysis, that was barely anything. And the 4 paragraphs can be broken down into the idea of the princess and the villain, poor unfortunate souls, representation in Disney parks, and I called it damsel in distress. And what I did is basically pause the movie and literally written down the structure of what my essay would be. And for these structures, I basically made a point, evidence, explanation, and link to Butler. So I've made these 4 paragraphs, I've finally finished my conclusion, and I can finally hand in the essay, and after that it was literally just a waiting game. And that's really it for this video. All I can say is that I made this video to show that if you put your head down, you will get quite far and make something that you're really proud of. So that's it for today. Thank you for watching. I am going to be making a kind of video essay so I didn't go into much detail here so I could actually talk about the essay itself in its own video. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!